when people understand that energy is through mitochondrial health, and the red light can really get those mitochondria back in powering on and producing ATP and clearing out those cells, mitophagy, etc. So the more people embrace it. That said, please don't just buy some random device off of Amazon. Or I had someone ask me once, can I get a light bulb and just put a red film around it? There is more science to it. So please look at quality devices like Sarah Thrive for actual difference and impact.
Breaking the gray.
Welcome back to the Rebel Scientist podcast. I am your host, Chantel, and I am here with my co-host and founder of Sarah Thrive, Rebel Scientist herself, Sarah Turner. Hi, Sarah.
Nice to see you again, Chantel.
Nice to see you. And today we have a wonderful guest, Claudia from the Longevity and Lifestyle podcast, biohacker and longevity coach. And I read that she's on a mission to help 1 billion people live longer, healthier, and more purpose-driven lives. So let's get straight in. Welcome, Claudia. So nice to have you.
Thank you so much. Oh, I'm so delighted to be here. So thank you so much for this wonderful invitation.
Yeah, and I read something in doing my research before the podcast. I read this really interesting fact about you coming from an investment banking, or transitioning from investment banking to biohacking, which is so fascinating. Could you tell us a little bit about how that transition happened and what caused you to move from that space into biohacking?
Yeah, no, my pleasure. So I say like many lifetimes in this lifetime, right? And so I started my career, studied international business management. And back in the day, it was like telling us as students, you have two choices. You go to management consulting or investment banking. So I was like, okay, let me go investment banking. Obviously very well suited for sort of A-type, don't need to sleep, I'll be fine. This sort of naive 20-something thinking you've got tons of energy and it's going to last forever. And then went on to actually become a serial entrepreneur. So was a pro at sort of burning the candle at both ends. I'm such an eternal student and such a keen person. So I was like taking on all these projects, and obviously your health catches up at some point, which was the case with me. So chronic sinusitis, gut health issues, pretty much almost like burnout and things like that too. And so I was like, there has to be a better way. And there was really a moment where I was in total denial with things. And I was like, I'll be fine. I'll just push through. And I had a call with my doctor, and he's like, your blood test results are in. He's like, I don't know what's going on, but I'm literally 2 weeks away from hospitalizing you. And I was almost like, who's he talking to? I was like, no, this isn't me. Still in total denial that like my body just was not where my mind was. Clearly very cerebral at the time. Mm-hmm. And I remember getting up and walking up the stairs, and it felt like walking up Mount Everest. It was like one slow step at a time. And I remember looking at my watch, and it wasn't even lunchtime. And I was like, what has happened? It just crept up on me. And I was just in total denial of the situation. And I was thinking, how am I going to manage today? And I had small kids and businesses to run. But then what is the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years going to be like if it's already this bad? And that was really like this click moment, like, no way, I do not choose that path. Like there has to be another way. And so fast forward a bit, I went down a rabbit hole to see that you can actually start with health optimization and proactive modalities that start to not only repair damage, but actually, bring you to this optimal, vibrant energy and health in a healthier way, so that it's not just about getting more hours in the day, but actually taking care of yourself. And it's been quite a journey, and there's lots of stories around that. I won't go into too much detail just now, but it really made me so excited to know that that is actually possible. And, did this for over 12 years now. And then 2020, my mother had unfortunately a really bad fall, which we found out later expedited her dementia and accumulated with COVID. She didn't get the recovery protocols. And so unfortunately now she's really end of life. And that's really become my big why, is to let people know that you don't need to go down that path of suffering and of chronic disease, that so many things are repairable if caught on time, or you just don't even go down there and you can step into this highest version of yourself with vibrant energy and doing the things that you love. So I'll pause there because I can go on and on about this, but that's in a nutshell my story.
It's interesting that you're kind of thinking that, it sounds to me like you're more into preventative care then, because you're kind of at that stage where you can see how it can go if you leave it too long.
Correct.
So what have been your major discoveries with with preventative care, because it is a difficult sell for a lot of people, and most people are exactly like yourself, or even like your mum, where people just don't deal with things until they really have to, and sometimes it gets too late. So how do you kind of help people to understand they need to start looking after themselves when they're not actually sick? Because I find that's a difficult conversation.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think even just taking a step back for people to understand the current Western medical system is taught on, so at medical school, doctors learn diagnosis, prescription. And so if you go to your very Western medicine doctor and you're saying, I'm not feeling great, and they'll be like, you're fine, like come back when there's an issue. So already you've learned, if that's happened to you several times, that actually no one's really, paying attention to you. You're not really sick just yet. And so I think that it's so important for people to know that like Alzheimer's is like a 20-year in the making disease, like heart failure, like all these conditions are 10, 20, 30 years in the making. And we know science is there to say that there are certain markers that we know are ideal for you from a functional medicine perspective, so an optimal range. And if you can stay in those markers, you will not get these diseases. And I feel like that is just so liberating. So how do you get someone to look at it and take it seriously? I mean, there's the naysayers that like, oh, this is snake oil, this isn't true, right? It's like there is scientific research. Listen to this podcast, listen to different podcasts. There are real scientific evidence. I have a newsletter, I share research, I cite the research. You can go read it up yourself to know that it's true. And then I think it's really making that choice and transition to, how do I choose to spend my days? Do I choose to lose energy and just accept it and be more of a couch potato and have issues and then fall and have a hip injury and that's kind of the end of it, or type 2 diabetes, etc.? I mean, if you spend enough time with an elderly or chronically ill person, hopefully that at least will be your motivation to realize it's time to do something. And unfortunately, we all have cases of friends with cancers, even younger and younger, right? Type 2 diabetes and all these really terrible diseases. I have a friend who's going blind in one eye because of type 1 diabetes. So these are all things where I'm like, these things are preventable, but we just need to catch them on time. So I think it's helping people know there is another way. It takes a bit of effort. Yes, it's not as easy as sitting on the couch watching Netflix and eating a McDonald's. But once, it's like a snowball effect, I would say. So once you get started and you optimize it and step by step, then it becomes easier thereafter.
So just on the preventative side, for you personally as well, reading that you've also like reversed your biological age, right? Is it 15 years?
17. Mm-hmm.
17. Oh, amazing. Yeah. What are the pivotal changes, or like the main pivotal changes that you feel like you made right in the beginning? So for somebody also starting out, but just sharing maybe a bit more about your personal journey, what those big changes were that you made.
Sure. Yeah. So again, everybody's different. And so this might resonate with some people. Other people are like, oh, that's not an issue for me. My two main ones were sleep and my gut health. And it's so important, as I'm sure your listeners know, the gut is the second brain. And if that's not, and that it, regulates so many things from your mood and your hormones and, you name it. And so it was really getting on top of those two things. So I have a sleep tracker that I wear now, Aura. There's different ones obviously out there. And just understanding about what is quality restorative sleep hygiene. Happy to share some tips for that as well, to really, get into that mode of calming down before going to sleep, so that it's not like full on, full action. And then like, oh, I can't sleep for 2 hours. I might as well be working, or whatever else people are doing in the evening, right? So really understanding sleep protocols, sleep hygiene, and the importance of it. So that was one really big piece for me. And then the other one was around repairing gut health, right? So doing full diagnostics for me. I've lived in 9 countries around the world, been to, third world countries. So I had very interesting bacteria and things like that needed to be solved as well. And really focusing on eating that diversity of good, clean food as well. They say like eat the rainbow. I'm one that's like, okay, these are my favorite meals. They're healthy. Let me just continue eating those. Like, no, you need the diversity and things like that too. And then I guess for people that are maybe thinking this might be a bit overwhelming, I'm a big fan of thinking once, This is from my tech startup days. So thinking once and then rolling it out from there. So it's like taking a bit of extra time now and then setting up a schedule. I have a friend who has 6 kids. She has a 4-week rolling meal plan, for example, right? I mean, if she could do her 6 kids.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
whatever you can do to automate it, because decision fatigue is real. And obviously, if you're tired, it's like, shall I go to the gym or not? You're going to be like, maybe not. But if it's in the calendar and you don't have to think about it anymore, it's just something you do like brushing your teeth. So that's also kind of a tip I would say is automate as much as you can so that you've thought about it once, you know that these are your intentions, you know that these are aligned with your goals and you can do it. So yeah, so sleep and gut health were 2 really big ones for me to get started with.
That, yeah, of course, you're kind of playing our tune. We're kind of all about the same thing. I'm wondering what you think of some of the more recent things that have come into the biohacking scene. Like, for example, we're both in London at the moment, and now they've got this Ezra thing, where you can go and get your bespoke MRI done. I mean, how do you think that's unnecessary, or do you think these are tools that are going to be actually really valuable to, especially if we're talking about preventative? I mean, they've been emailing me all the time because I must have signed up to some list, probably at the Don't Die. So,
Yeah.
it's like, I don't know if I need an MRI, but what do you think about that?
Yeah, really good question as well. And I think for people listening, it also depends on budget. So I don't want people to feel excluded because they're like, I can't afford that. I know Brian Johnson's like, I spend $2 million a year. And people are like, that's not in my budget and it's not in most people's, right? But in terms of the MRI scan, I think it's interesting. So there can be false positives, which is obviously nerve-wracking for people. But I do think that establishing a baseline, and there are a bunch of different ones. There's the Prenuvos, Nico Health out of Sweden is now expanding into London and other places as well. I think that it is helpful to establish a baseline of a full scan. Maybe someone's doing DEXA scans for bone density separately. Okay, that's already great. I have a dear friend, one of my best friends, who had cancer. And because she went and did an MRI later that year, they detected that they hadn't cleared all the cancer and that maybe saved her life. And so it's a balance between wanting to know, but if you find out early, you can still do so much versus it gets too late and then you miss it. And I don't want to be fear mongering. And if people are like, it's not my budget, am I missing out? But if it is, and just even establishing that baseline, and if everything looks clear, then you don't need to maybe do it every year, but maybe every couple of years, whatever might work in their budget. And hopefully at some point, insurance, maybe even the NHS in the UK might decide to reimburse something like this or cover it. What is your view?
Yeah.
I'm curious. What do you guys think?
I I am kind of I'm low tech, generally I'm low tech, but I am kind of over 50 now, and I am at the age where I obviously value my health. So it is out of my budget, to be honest. But if I felt it was something that was going to prevent me getting ill as I get older, then you find the money for it, right? Because what's more valuable? I mean, there's nothing more valuable than kind of having your health as you age. Now, everybody talks about longevity. Nobody wants to have longevity if they're sick. You only want longevity if you're healthy, right?
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
So I am looking at it. I mean, I'm going to have the DEXA scan soon, so I am going to do that. And I do invest in I do home blood testing and things. I think the MRI is a step too far when, I've got absolutely no reason to think that there is anything. But if I did have any kind of niggles, or if I had a family member I was concerned about, I probably would try and find the money to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just interesting because it seems to have come out of nowhere. All of a sudden, we've got all of this kind of interesting tech that's coming in, a huge interest in longevity. And I think it is kind of post-COVID. Everyone got a bit of a shock that, okay, we're not immortal and we really need to look after our health. And now longevity is a booming space. And so there are so many options. And it's interesting that you're talking about money and we don't want to price people out. Coming from your background where you kind of have had training in finances, it is kind of part of your kind of health and goal. And it's something that nobody really talks about. We all want to say, okay, yeah, you can go and stand on the grass and do grounding. Yet there are things you can do that are free.
Correct.
At the same time, you've got a background in finance. Do you think that is something that's really helped you? Because your health and wealth are linked. I don't want to be elitist, and I certainly am not anybody. I'm the person who has just focused on health and not on wealth, maybe to my detriment. I wonder whether it is something, if we're thinking about a holistic approach to well-being, it should include your relationships. It should include your relationship to money. It should include all of these different things. Because if we just focus on the biology, is that holistic? So I wonder what you think about that, because you do have an interesting background to talk about it.
I mean, yeah, my days then were very ignorant to the fact of like longevity and stuff like that too. So that wasn't focusing at that point. But I do agree it's very important for people to find the right balance in things. And I talk at, some conferences and things about the triad to longevity, which is the body, mind, and spirit piece. But you're right, there is that lifestyle piece that should wrap around it essentially, because you want to live well. And it, again, I think some people, and money is a big topic in and of itself, right? But I think if you break down like what do you really need, and I'm like reading some stoic stuff with my kids, and at the end of the day, it's quality relationships. Do you need to have the most luxurious house? Like if you can afford it, go ahead. But like, do you want to put yourself into debt to be in some sort of crazy scenario? And I think more and more, especially post-COVID, people are realizing, you know what, like I don't want to be fixed to a certain spot. Like I'd love to spend part of my year maybe here, and I can Airbnb and rent out my house. So I do think that there is a shift in people's needs and wants in terms of acquiring and having, and almost that's kind of burdensome. So it's almost kind of calculating, what do I need now going into the future, maybe when hopefully I still have enough energy to continue doing what I love to do until I'm 80, 90, and 100, but maybe not. And so just setting yourself up to make sure that you are in a comfortable position and you have choices, right? So I think the beauty with technology is that you can be doing a lot of stuff from a place like Thailand, which maybe doesn't cost as much as London, right? But yeah, so I think in general, it is important to figure out a lifestyle, figure out a model, get concrete on like what are my needs and my goals for now, and then what are they for later. And in terms of investing in your health now, completely agree. They say that when you have your health and you're focused on 1,000 goals, but when you don't have your health, that's your number one goal, and that's the only one. And so I think for people kind of thinking, well, I don't need to worry about it now, or it's fine. It's almost like a health tax that you're paying a little bit of premium for stuff now, like maybe buying the organic food versus the fruit covered in pesticides, which are going to destroy your gut health and your brain and like there's so many consequences to it. And so you invest a little bit more now, but to maintain the standard that you are for longer. So just to encourage people to maybe invest that little bit more into the quality food, because it's the medicine you feed your body every day.
Agreed.
Yeah, because just to add into what you were saying, I think the one thing that I'd be also curious to know what you think about, you've obviously already given a little bit of where people could start, is the overwhelmingness of like how many tests or how many wearables or devices and where to start. And I think maybe once you've been experimenting for a while, you kind of have a knack, oh, that's not going to work, or that is, and maybe you've got great coaches or great practitioners. But I always keep going back to the point of wanting to know if you had to start. That's why I keep asking like of where to start, even for when it comes to wearable techs, like say the Aura Ring, super useful, but again, with someone's mental space or where they're at and not wanting to freak someone out about those kinds of, what I was curious to know, devices and tools that you feel like are at the base level. Maybe you could give an option of like, if you're just entering in, what's a great tool and device to have? And then if you're a little bit more advanced and you have the money, what's the next kind of like level up, which would be great to have for your ultimate.
Okay, so there's many different levels and for different prices too. I know, exactly, because we can go like full premium and stuff too. I think, and again, this comes down to what someone's needs are. I think from a almost for free perspective, getting morning sunlight so things for free, right? So morning sunlight in the first 30 minutes of waking, having some sort of gratitude, meditation practice, journaling. So these are things that are pretty much free. The journal obviously costs a little bit. Getting quality sleep, which means winding down, not watching social media just before going to sleep, no blue lights, cold room, these different modalities to grounding, you were mentioning before, in nature, spending time in nature, spending time with friends that raise your energy, right? That make you laugh, not the ones that make you more stressed, right? Maybe a little bit less of them and those family members. So these are sort of free modalities. And I think that's really important for people to understand. Kind of going up another level is investing in the medicine you feed your body every day, right? We talked about before the food. So really being cautious what's in there. I'll give you an example. Just back from the US, and we had to pop into Publix to pick up something. And I just caught my eye. I was like, oh, they have wild caught salmon. Great. And I was looking at the color. I was like, this color looks a bit off, right? Flipped it around, thankfully. And in the United States, they are still allowed to use highly toxic, known cancer causing dyes in food. So on the front of the packaging was all about wild caught, healthy. They're able to write anything on it, but the color was a bit orange. I just picked up on that. Flipped it over and I see they have red dye 3, red dye 5, like they're injecting literally into the wild caught fish into that. So just learning to read labels well, I think, is very helpful, because already you can kind of skim out. And, when in doubt, just stay on the outer parameter of a supermarket and avoid all those like inner shopping aisles, essentially. So I think that's the next tier up. And so looking at devices, again, depends what your struggles are. I think for me, Aura was really helpful. I am a data-driven person. I like to look at it. So that was really helpful for me in understanding, okay, I need to even reschedule some meetings or some of the plans for today because I did not sleep well last night. There was different things or whatever it might be. For someone who's maybe in a more high stress state, I'm a huge fan. You guys see here, it's the Apollo Neuro, which I love. It's a gentle vibration on the skin. A friend is the co-founder, Dr. Dave Rabin, and it's shown through clinical research that it's like a gentle, soothing vibration on the skin and helps just to calm that fight or flight state, to allow you to be better focused, to have more periods in the parasympathetic or calm state, essentially, as well. Another big device, obviously, Sarah Thrive is amazing. The red light's super, super important for the gut and brain axis. So, huge fan of that. And also the Neurovisor, I think, was really powerful, especially because of my mother's situation, that brain training neuroplasticity. And it's essentially a panel, a light panel that flickers white light, but it trains the brain because it's unpredictable. So it's not like you're training alpha or theta or one of the different brain waves. It's continuously moving around. You kind of see this kaleidoscopic color. So it's almost like some sort of psychedelic journey going on. But I find that really great for that brain training. And what's exciting, I think, is the research out of MIT last year showing that this pulsating light can actually clear amyloid plaque from the brain. So they're trying to get some FDA approvals for Alzheimer's dementia patients as well. But that's, depending on budget, some of the things that I think are really excellent. For some people, if they're maybe in a city or they don't have access to nature, things like a PEMF mat are really powerful. Taking things up a level. Some people swear by the red light beds for people who need maybe more intense detox. If you can find it, sauna, super powerful. To really clear those toxins. I think a lot of people don't realize that they have so much exposure to toxins and molds. They might be living somewhere where there's even black mold, like between the walls from a leakage. And so clearing these things out of your body on a regular basis. I mean, if you look at like Finnish people, they're like 102 and they go to sauna like 5 times a week or 7 times a week, and they're like full of energy and like totally fine. So, we can learn from, it's not even ancient, it's like practices that they're continuing to do all the time as well. So, yeah, I'm probably forgetting a bunch of stuff, but I'd say that those are some things for people to start with. And then obviously there is, the hypoxia training and these other like equipment pieces, but you're talking about thousands and thousands. So I don't think they're everybody's cup of tea.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. A lot of things that you've got going on there. So you've kind of, you have a protocol, do you, that you recommend for people?
Yeah. So when I work with clients together, we typically do like an analysis of like all the different areas of life, because as you were saying as well, like if you are really struggling with relationships or, different things that will impact your health. So it's fine and good if someone's like, oh yeah, like I'm just optimizing, this one piece, but actually it's a wheel and the wheel ain't gonna roll if there's part of it is like totally dented in, right? So it's understanding first line that baseline, where things are, and then addressing in terms of priority what is the most important. And yeah, I take people sort of through a journey, starting with mindset, super important. I mean, the amount of people that are, and I used to be like this, like your biggest bully, and those
Yeah.
repetitive thought patterns, like it's just hard to be motivated, to getting clear on like what is your purpose, to then looking at things like what can you declutter from your day so that you can automate systems and have more time for the things that you love, and then taking a deep dive into the longevity nutrition, into some of the biohacks depending on interest and budgets, the exercise, strength training, mobility, super super important. And then it continues on with like mind enhancement protocols, and also that relationships and sexual health piece, super important too, and then bringing it all together. So yeah, that's just to give you a little flavor.
What are some of the mind protocol ones you do to help with the, like the negative mind space, or people to kind of shift their belief systems?
To shift as well. Yeah, that's really good. So one is awareness, which is so important because people don't even realize, if I hear people, I train also in NLP, right? So if people be like, oh, I'm so stupid or whatever, I'm like, don't say that. Like your brain is listening to you and you're reinforcing these very demoralizing things. So it's being very select. Well, first of all, it's that awareness. Like every time you notice something, like write it down. And then you might be like, oh, wow, I like beat myself up every day, and helping people to understand that you need to be your biggest cheerleader and be in that positive space. And it's interesting, I've interviewed on my podcast some Olympic athletes, and they're so trained into looking for the positive, even if they miss the race, like winning the race by split seconds. They're so trained to just go back and understand what did they do really well. It doesn't even occur to them to look for the negative. And that was really interesting speaking with Olympic athletes, because I was listening to them speaking and I was like, wow, you don't even think about the negative. Whereas your average person is always like, oh gosh, I should have done better, especially women, right? Women are the best at like, I should have done better. The guys are like, oh, I think it was okay. I was pretty fine. But anyway, so we women, we need to be bigger cheerleaders. So awareness, and then learning or deciding what are some different verbiage for limiting beliefs and how to rephrase them. Like, I've got this, or I can do this, or I am fearless, like whatever it might be. And deciding to be the thermostat and not the thermometer in your life. So you're not going to be going up and down in terms of situations. Like you choose to be that stable course as well. And then reframing things like, oh, I have to get up, have to get my kids, just switching it to I get to get up. I get to go pick up my kids. I get to go to work. And it just shifts into this gratitude state and realizing, we have so much agency and choice in our life, and to be grateful even for the little things. So those are some of
Yeah.
the practices.
Yeah,
Yeah, I bet that's
reframing
very,
is so powerful.
yeah, I bet that is powerful. And what do you think about, because at the moment it's all in the news, we're kind of on a bit of a quick fix thing with all these like GLP-1s and things like that. What's your view on those?
Yeah, good, big question. I was at the Eudaimonia Summit in Palm Beach, and there was a very lively panel on that, and it was like split stage. And I take JJ Virgin's view on this too, that I believe it helps people that genuinely need it to understand. And Oprah actually talked about this recently. She's like, I realized that, because she's taken it, right, that I don't have to, like, other people are not thinking about food all the time. It's not this constant inner battle. And I think there needs to be a level of compassion for people really struggling, that this gives them the opportunity to actually get up and do things, to actually make better food choices, to start reframing things, to not go down the typical neural pathways. I don't think any of us can understand what it is to be severely obese and have things. So I think for certain people, I think it is an opportunity to start to change their life, which I think is a gift. That said, I'm obviously not a big fan of pharmaceuticals, and I think there's a time and a place for them, etc. But I think there is a gap in the market in terms of helping the people who are deciding to go on the GLP-1 route, at least to begin their journey, in terms of better understanding what it is to actually move properly. What is it to actually eat properly? It's kind of like, here's an injection, come back in a few months when you need a top up, and walk more, eat better, have some good, sleep, and you're fine. And that's where I think there is a missing gap in the market of using it as an opportunity to really re-educate people and let them understand ultra processed foods are, made, scientifically engineered by scientists who used to be in the tobacco industry and then switched over to the big food. to make you addicted to it. They've even got the science of like the sound of opening up a bag of crisps or chips, depending on where you're in the world, to make it sound so attractive and appealing. Like they are out to get you. And so letting people understand that this is an industry behind it, and yeah, basically learning to read the food labels, focus on the right food that is genuinely good for them. And yeah, that education piece I think is pretty big as well. So that's my 50 cents. I know some
Good
people are very
point.
extreme in one way, some people are extreme in another.
And on
Yeah.
stem cells, just now we're speaking about a few things that are hyped at the moment. What are your thoughts on the use of stem cells and the form in which it's used? Have you tried them yourself?
I haven't tried them myself yet. I have spoken to several different scientists and doctors that are clinically using stem cells, and I'm very excited about them. I think that they are a huge piece of the puzzle that has just been pushed to the side, particularly in the US. Obviously, in other countries, they're much more accessible and used as well. I was speaking yesterday with Dr. John Lawrence, right, who uses the X cells, which is from adipose tissue. There's other applications from amniotic fluid, etc. So there are use cases, and I've seen sort of befores and after from someone with third degree burns that used an amniotic fluid spray, and within 6 days it was almost completely healed, which would have normally taken 2 months, skin grafts, etc. To also had Dr. Harry Adelson on the podcast, who has a doctor clinics in Utah, and he said 20 years ago the cowboys used to come into him and say, whatever they're injecting in my horses that would have been like put out to pasture is working because they're working another few years. Can you inject my joints with this too? And all of a sudden, they were reviving, right? Because they're quite laborious work as well. So there is a lot of science out there. It's not that this is some random like gimmick that's just come about. Like this has been researched for a long time. It's just when one understands how how do I phrase this diplomatically, but the US medical system is set up and where incentives lie, if you kind of follow the money, I believe that there was a bit of a push to the side of stem cells, even though that regenerative medicine piece is so powerful, including for mental health, not mental health, but Parkinson's, like neurodegenerative diseases. There's so much more research that could be done if funding was available to understand all the different use case and applications. But because it's a natural substance, if it's done ethically and properly as well, that it's transformative. And again, it helps people reverse things that they don't need to go down that chronic health issue path. So yeah, I'm very excited about it.
And hopefully things are changing a little bit with the regulator. It seems like some of these big institutions, their days are a little bit numbered. It does have that vibe that we're kind of seeing a bit of a revolution in the way that things are, the bureaucracy behind it. There's places that are setting up in the Bahamas, for example, that let you do slightly different ways of testing and still validate your science.
That there's change in regulations and how they use stem cells. Yes, exactly.
I know you've already mentioned so many very useful bits that might even been there already. But if you want to give a little, snippet
Teaser
about what to expect and tease it, yeah.
For your audience, I'd be delighted to share my free playbook on 10 biohacks to increase your life and longevity. And you just need to go to the website. It's longevity-and-lifestyle.com/10 biohacks, or even on the homepage, you can find it as well. And so there I share some of my favorite biohacks. I don't want to give away too much. I want to leave a little bit of intrigue, but I'd want to share obviously with people so that they can get started on their journey. And of course, I'm available. So if any questions or whatever, people should just reach out. I'm also on Instagram at longevity and lifestyle. I love helping people where I can. I get different messages and different people on different journeys. And I think that that's the big piece where I wish the medical profession had more time in the day to read the research, to understand what's available. But doctors go into medicine typically, they really want to help people, but they have 6-minute medical appointments with people once a year. And they're like, okay, well, what can I do in the 6 minutes? Do you need a prescription? Okay, here you go. So they don't have the luxury of having enough time to get up to speed on the latest research, to understand the modalities, and then to really have a comprehensive conversation with patients to be able to help them on a more profound level, if it's not acute medical needs, right?
Is there something that, I know everyone's so individual and different, but is there something that you're seeing, especially recently, a lot of people are struggling with? You know, like in terms of health conditions or just a blockage within the health, them kind of trying to overcome and get into that space of healing themselves?
I would really say the mental health piece is huge, really, really big. And I think what's great is that more people are talking about it. I had severe postnatal depression previously, but also speaking with friends who are scientists that are also doing work around the psychedelic space, and there too. And it's obviously not for everyone, and it's not legal in many countries as well. But there is so much power and possibility into it. So I think number one is that people start opening up and discussing mental health challenges and realizing they are not alone. I think for a lot of people, they just feel some were alone during COVID, right? Totally isolated, and other struggles that they might have. And addressing that first and foremost and figuring out what is needed from your support network, discussing it, hey, I'm having a bad day, or I'm feeling down, or I'm really struggling with this, and just opening up that dialogue, because when in doubt, like your dear friends and family, they want to support and help you. So I think that that is what I really see as a big piece. And at the conferences where I am, or talking with people, they're all about like, oh yeah, I'm taking these, these supplements, and I'm doing this or whatever too. But if you have more in-depth conversations, they're like, yeah, but I'm really struggling because I'm by myself. And so it's helping people. And again, that's why I talk about that triad for longevity. It's the body, mind, and spirit. And so, for people perhaps listening that are feeling anxious or depression or whatever it might be, number one, you are not alone, and there are people and services out there that can really help. And it is super important to address it now, because otherwise the black hole just keeps getting bigger and darker too. So I think that is a really big piece that we don't talk about enough, and I think it's just so important.
From your point of view then, Claudia, do you have that in the kind of protocol you follow? You're mainly looking at the mental wellness piece as kind of a starting point, or is it more just you integrate it into your holistic plan?
Yeah, I typically integrate. Again, it will depend where the person is. I am
Yeah.
not a psychotherapist. I'm not a psychiatrist, or any of those things. I just want people to understand the importance of it. And things like not maintaining good sleep will impact it. Your diet will impact it. Lack of exercise will impact it. And on the flip side, if you have good sleep, if you eat well, if you exercise regularly, your hormones will be where they need to be, your mood, etc. You will feel better. If you are workaholic, which I sometimes have tendencies to, I have to remind myself I do need to carve out time, to be more present with kids, with friends, etc. It's just as important as well. So it's reprioritizing things like that too. If people are really deeply struggling, then obviously professional help is very beneficial. Some choose to pursue the in the US, right, the ketamine assisted therapy, for example. There are other places I've spoken with the founders of Beyond Ibogaine, which is a really interesting compound. It's in Mexico currently, but they're discussing it for the US as well. There's research out of Stanford that shows that it actually reverses brain aging because of the neuroplasticity impact by up to 1.5 years per session, which I just think is like amazing. But it's obviously not everybody's cup of tea. And I'm not saying that, this is what people should do, but I think it's fascinating because of the results versus if you look at the typical SSRIs and, what comes out of that prescription medication thing that just doesn't cure anything. It just maintains things, versus these psychedelics have the power for the right cases. It's not for everybody, to actually reverse some of these challenges like the PTSDs. I mean, if you look at war veterans, etc. So they are very promising. I'm very excited about it. So yeah.
Sometimes even just with one dose, right? It's something that it's not
Yeah.
like a drug where you have to be on it permanently either. For a lot of people, it's sometimes one dose, but it's definitely kind of sporadic. It's not something that you do all the time, as I understand. So again, from
Yeah.
that point of view, it's also a lot better for you from a long-term health point of view.
Correct.
And
Yeah.
also
And just
guided. Or like
guided. Exactly.
facilitated.
Yeah. Yeah. The set and setting is very important.
Yes,
Spoken to a lot of people. And then the most important thing is the integration thereafter. So it's not a magic bullet, like once and then it's done. It's that you still have to do the work, but you're coming from a different place, a different realization as well. So it's part of that, neural pathway rewiring, but you need to implement thereafter as well. So definitely a professional that knows what they're doing in the right set and setting, so you feel safe and secure because you're exposing yourself to a vulnerability essentially.
Yeah, great.
Awesome. I wanted to jump into our rapid fire round where it's just like 4 questions of either or. You can answer longer if you like as well. If you so the first one is cold plunges, invigorating or intimidating?
So you're gonna find I struggle at just giving a short answer.
No, that's fine.
Summertime and heat, like right now, it's quite hot here, so I'd be happy to jump into a cold plunge. I used to be very terrified of it, and I was like the chicken in the shower with like one hand in, one hand out. I have moved on from there, and I can actually do the full cold plunge and find it amazing. And I know I have ADHD, right? So your dopamine levels can increase by up to 500%. That said, newer research shows that women actually shouldn't go down to such cold temperatures as men can. So that was really interesting to read and a bit of a relief as well. Like, okay.
Yeah.
Don't need all the ice cubes the whole time. I think the benefits are substantial. And the temperature of the water can be adjusted depending on needs. And even just doing end of the shower, cold shower is really beneficial. As I mentioned before, the research shows up to 500% dopamine increase over a prolonged period of time. So first thing in the morning, you're switched on, especially for the ADHD brains amongst us. Yeah.
I've also heard, I'll move on to the next one now, but I wondered if you suggested to your clients about, depending on what, for women, what stage in your cycle you are and to avoid it, like in the luteal menstruation phase.
Yeah, exactly. There's certain phases as well to do a little bit less of the biohacks than other, but typically, exactly, the luteal phase, right, and where's the progesterone's ramping up, etc. The first half of your cycle is typically like a better time for some of these more extreme modalities. That said, we are all different, and so I always feel like the more you're able to check in with self and feel like, do I feel more energized, or is this actually, energy negative for me and it's too much stress on the body? I think that's something to look at. So I caveat as well. Again, this is personalized medicine. This is why like slapping on a CGM, even for a few weeks or a month, is super helpful. You see how your body responds to different things. So yeah.
Great. Next one is nootropics, essential or overrated?
Ooh, a tricky one, but I guess I would say more essential, either ones that, have a calming effect to alertness. I think that it is very beneficial. I think there are obviously a plethora of different ones, but in general, like if we can keep our brain firing on all cylinders for as much as possible.
What are your favorite ones? Now I'm making them longer.
So recently I started taking ashwagandha with rhodiola and is it L-theanine in it as well? And I found that really amazing for focus. I do lion's mane I throw into my morning smoothies as well. I've taken different ones also from Bioptimizers. So they had Newtopia. They have a really cool one like Zammer juice. Actually, I should have taken it before the interview today, which is great for like speech and things like that too. So yeah, there's different ones obviously to trying to do. What are your favorite ones? I'm curious.
I've also dabbled in a lot of them. I like making, because I've done some, I'm also really into the herbs, but I find that I just like on a warning side of like gut stuff, not to make too many concoctions, because I've also gone through phases where I'm like, but I really like also the ones you just mentioned now, and sometimes switching out drinking caffeine for having things like chaga and lion's mane if I'm getting too stressed. Yeah. And yours, Sarah?
I don't take a lot of supplements. I think that the liver's got enough to do without kind of piling them on. I am taking a magnesium. I do put cordyceps in my morning coffee and lion's mane sometimes. I do normally put spirulina into something that I take. I'm taking creatine.
Creatine, really important. Yes.
I think that's it, berberine. I'm taking a berberine at the moment, and sodium butyrate, which I find is good for the gut. But I don't take a lot of the nootropic ones. There's all kinds of, I get given a lot of all the different formulas, and sometimes I,
We
you know,
do.
Me
a
too.
bit weird afterwards. Yeah, I kind of,
For these
you know,
events, we sometimes, you're like buzzing. I think that's the thing. We're both sensitive in different
anyway,
ways, so we're always checking in. Yeah.
we travel together a lot. We've always got a load that we've been given. We're like, oh, should we give this a go? And I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. What's the cutoff time? Yeah.
I do a lot of
How
things
early in
like
the day is it?
I do cocoa powder. I do cinnamon. I do foraging when I'm in England, and so I eat a lot of things like wild herbs and things. I made nettle cake the other day. I do kind of try to make sure I'm having a very varied diet, and so I'm taking things in powdered form. I just don't take too many capsules. But you know, those ones I am taking. I think spirulina is very good for energy in mushrooms also, and berberine I'm taking as a anti-inflammatory.
Yeah,
Berberine
since
excellent
traveling
also for
spirulina, I've been taking
spirulina
a
is
lot
good.
more and found it helping. Yeah.
Yeah, and berberine is actually definitely worth a big shout out there. So I've had Sean Wells on, the world's leading formulator. So the dihydroberberine is really, really powerful for managing glucose levels. It's almost like the natural GLP-1s. I should have mentioned this before,
Mm.
in terms of maintaining those blood glucose levels. And a lot of chronic disease come from metabolic dysfunction, insulin resistance. So taking it twice a day, really, really powerful as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and a
Interesting.
good spoon of
That's really good.
cinnamon. That's also good for stabilizing the blood sugar.
Yeah,
And it's
I have
delicious.
cinnamon in my coffee in the morning, and another one is paraxanthine, which is the extract from caffeine, so it doesn't have the same jittering effect and all the negative effects
Mm.
essentially of coffee, and very beneficial then as well. So it's a compound you can find in some supplements. I know you're not a big fan of, and some more and more drinks these days.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're working with Sean.
Sneaking them in. The next one's actually speaking about anxiety inducing is sleep. We've already touched on it, but is sleep trackers. If you find them insightful or anxiety inducing,
I
I
think
know
I know
it
my
depends on the
answer.
person. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it depends.
I think super super insightful, and what actually I find really interesting is Aura's really upgraded their insights that they're providing, and I really like their big push towards women's health and like cycle tracking and things like that as well. Um, HRV is a really big thing. We haven't really touched on that yet, but understanding your heart rate variability and how you can improve it over time versus watching it decline, and it's your ability to manage stress, has many other different benefits as well. But these type of insights I find very powerful, and it's quite funny because Aura now shows you the times of the day when you were particularly stressed. So it's like, oh, that meeting with that person, like, need to avoid that one, or those type of conversations. And I think just to be mindful of yourself. I think when we're so busy we forget to check in, and I think it allows us, or I find at least, right, it gives us those data points to kind of laugh and be like, okay, yes, okay, that wasn't so good.
Yeah.
Or let me
Yeah.
adjust,
Or it tells you to go
let me
for a
do
walk,
grounding
doesn't it?
before.
Flashes up. Isn't it about time you moved a little bit? Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
The funny one I have, I don't know if you guys have had it, where it tells you that your resilience isn't so good, and you think, "Oh, I thought I had a good night's sleep." And then,
The
yeah,
scores. Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Awareness.
last one is red light therapy, daily
Hmm.
ritual or occasional boost.
Daily ritual, really really powerful. Yeah, I mean, I had Sarah on my podcast as well discussing it. I think when people understand that energy is through mitochondrial health, and the red light can really get those mitochondria back in powering on and producing ATP, and clearing out those cells, in mitophagy, etc. So um, I think the more people embrace it. That said, please don't just buy some random device off of Amazon. Or I had someone ask me once, can I get a light bulb and just put a red film around it? There is more science to it. So please look at quality devices like Sarah Thrive, for actual difference and impact. And I'm always a big fan of, like, just try it. Try it for a week, try it for 10 days. A lot of companies will have a 14-day money back guarantee or 30-day money back guarantee, but incorporate it into your routine. I love to, if I'm doing meditation or taking a break during the day, I will do red light while I'm doing it, as much as I can. And it's no extra time, that net time, right? So
Yeah.
it's kind of compounding, stacking things together. So it's not like you're spending your whole day biohacking essentially.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, you've got so much. I already feel like I need to go and check out your website. Well, I think the thing that I like the most about what you've said with us today is about the kind of forward planning and kind of not just kind of scattergun approach to this. I think that's what I've got from what you've said today. And I'm like, that just takes a little bit of forward planning, sitting down, what are your goals? And you can do it on all the different levels. You don't have to kind of be thinking about massive budgets, but that is so important, and then you can kind of elevate your health. So thank you for that. That's brilliant. Where can people find you?
Yeah, no, my pleasure. And it is a game changer. And then just stick it in your diary or your calendar, and you don't even need to think about it anymore. It's just like, oh yeah, this is the time to do this. Ta-da. longevity-and-lifestyle.com is the website. Again, you can find the freebie there on the homepage as well. I'm on Instagram at longevity and lifestyle. The podcast is the longevity and with the symbol lifestyle. And reach out if anyone has questions or if I can be of service. Please let me know. I'm here to help.
Thank you so much.
Amazing. I want to end with one last question, and that's if you could put a message on a billboard for millions to see, what would it say?
Yeah, really good question and so tricky, but I really think that the self-belief, like believe in yourself. I think we let ourselves be so influenced by others. That self-doubt, I'm not here. It's, as Joseph Campbell talks about, find your bliss, like find what makes you sing and just believe in yourself and watch the universe unfold things for you as well. So self-love, self-belief every day.
Thank you so much. You've given us so much to think about, and thank you for being so inspiring and all the work that you do.
My pleasure. Oh,
yeah,
thank you.
To see more.
Same here.
We'll see you in person soon, I hope. At one of these
me
events.
too.
Till next time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Till next time. Thank you so much for having me. It's been such a pleasure. Okay. Bye.
Breaking the gray.